Good afternoon, everyone. And it's fantastic to see everyone here in person after what has been a long pandemic. And welcome to our J03 Biomedical Engineering facility launch here at the University of Sydney. We're tremendously grateful to have you here and to celebrate this wonderful occasion and to physically feel the anticipation of what we can achieve here as a close-knit community of leaders in industry and academia in this very building. For those joining online, my sincere welcome goes to you too. And I hope that in the near future, you'll be able to come here and explore this exciting space where it will be the forefront of, quite literally, life-changing biomedical technology. My name is Young Ne, and I'll be the MC for today's session. I'm a lecturer here at the School of Biomedical Engineering, and it's a great honor to be emceeing this landmark event signifying the evolution of the Faculty of Engineering here at the University of Sydney. Before we begin the proceedings, I would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of this land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. It is upon their ancestral lands that the University of Sydney is built. As we share our knowledge, teaching, learning, and research practices within this university, may we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. For our face-to-face attendees, I'll now go through some basic housekeeping. Firstly, the bathrooms are behind the lifts. If you walk out this way, around the corner, and you'll see lockers. That's where the bathrooms are, opposite the lockers. If by any chance the fire alarms do go off, please exit the building through the fire exits over there behind you, or there's fire exits on the far side of the building towards my left, and there's also an exit behind this wall to my right. The emergency meeting place is at the Gadigal Green, which is the big grass area on this side of the building outside. I'll now call upon our Faculty of Engineering Dean, Professor Willy Zwaenepoel, for his opening remarks and his faculty welcome. Let us welcome to the podium with a round of applause.
Thanks, Young. So welcome to all of you, and also welcome on behalf of the Chancellor, who unfortunately could not be here today. So welcome also on behalf of the faculty, and let me say just a few words about the history of all of this, the very short history in a sense. We decided to create a School of Engineering in December of 2018, shortly after I joined here as Dean of Engineering. And when you do something like that in the university, there's always two things that happen. First, there is a howl of protests, from people that feel like that money was much better spent elsewhere, on them, usually. And then the other thing that happens is there's very bold statements of what's going to be accomplished as a result of all of this, and these bold statements then find their way into business cases and whatnot to convince the money to be spent. Now, I would say with the hindsight of a few years, the protesters have been shown wrong, and much of what's been promised has actually already been accomplished. So the big, bold statement that I remember in my office was something of the form, we're going to double everything. We're going to double the number of students. We're going to double the number of PhD students. We're going to double the amount of research income. Everything is going to be twice as good as before. And actually, not quite there yet, but in many ways, we're pretty close. The number of PhD students has actually more than doubled. The research income has grown from what was 4.8 million to 9.1. I think it's close enough to double. The number of students hasn't really grown as much as we had hoped. It has grown by 50%. Of course, COVID was no help in that regard. It's very hard to get foreign students to come. But I think there's good hope for the future there too. This is anecdotal in many ways and mostly hearsay because I'm not in this space, but and Dick can maybe say more about this, but I'm being told that whereas before you would see job adverts of the form, we're looking for a mechanical engineer with some knowledge of biomedical engineering, or we're looking for an electrical engineer or a chemical engineer with some knowledge of biomedical engineering. What you now start seeing more and more is we're looking for a biomedical engineer. And so there's really job opportunities, and I think the students will eventually follow where the money is, so to speak. So let me perhaps, other than sort of saying that we managed to double all the numbers, also acknowledge a few other accomplishments. We actually have a laureate fellow, we have a future fellow, we have a number of DECRA fellows, we had an HMRC fellow, we had a training center, an ARC training center. So it's been quite successful. And also on the teaching front, there used to be a program, an undergraduate program in biomedical engineering. It's sort of student satisfaction scores have improved quite significantly from, if you're internal, you know what this means, from 3.8 to 4.2. Suffice it to say, it's a significant improvement. And I think it's sort of proof of what we were trying to do with the school in terms of creating an identity for the researchers and an identity for the teaching program, and I think it's really worked out. Now, the other part of the bold statement was we're also going to double the number of academics, and that we haven't really succeeded in either, and some of that is due to COVID as well, but much of it has actually been due to the absence of lab space. So I remember this was in my very first year here, we made 2 offers to 2 stellar candidates, and they both turned us down. And the reason basically was that they didn't want to take the risk that they would show up and not have lab space. And also for some of the people that were already here, I know the lab space problem has been an issue and has sort of put back some of the research programs. But all of that should be over and done with now. Now, all of that said, there's still not an abundance of space. I mean, if you go on the tour, you will see that it's pretty crowded out there. And in a way, that's good, because that has sort of forced us to build one shared big laboratory rather than many laboratories separately, and so people can interact much more naturally. But again, all of that said, it is pretty crowded out there, and we're essentially already out of space. So not exactly clear where we're going to grow. So with that, I've discharged myself of the mandatory duty of a dean at the inauguration of a new building, which is to point out to the Vice Chancellor that we need another building. That aside, I want to close, and I want to thank all the people that were involved in this process, both the people from the school and the faculty, the people from finance and from buildings, from UI, and everybody that was involved in this. I want to, in particular, it's always a bit sensitive to single out one single person, but I want to in particular thank Greg Swanning, who chaired became head of school when the school was founded, and then brought the school in here. Some of you may have heard this statement that managing academics is like herding cats. So getting them to move into a new building is like getting cats to move in a new building, which is even more difficult, it seems like. So I think, Greg, you've done a fantastic job. I congratulate you and thank you for all your efforts. And with that, I'll close and I'll turn it over to Scott, who will say a little bit more about the building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Willy, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that acknowledgement to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be here today at the launch of this building and the new facilities for biomedical engineering. I'd like to provide some brief remarks and display some photographs about the facilities themselves, and then you'll be able to see those facilities firsthand on the tours later this afternoon. The J03 ETP Stage 1 redevelopment, in which we're all sitting right now, these biomedical engineering facilities are the first part, and they form an integral part of that overall development. It really has begun to reinvigorate, as Willy's alluded to, the faculty's infrastructure to support the excellent reputation for research and education. The full development involved upgrading of the retained tower to the south, the electrical engineering building, integrating this 9-level building in which we're currently occupying with the adjacent mechanical engineering building and the engineering link building. It also embellished open space to my rear, fronting Mays Crescent, and all of this open plaza area fronting Blackwattle Creek Lane. Uses within the facility include education, research, administration and storage. Specifically, the ETP Stage 1, as we affectionately call it, contains new teaching spaces with a 156 student X-Lab and an 84-person teaching lab. There's obviously those that form part of the new laboratories for biomedical engineering, and it also has throughout the building communal space with public domain connecting that I've spoken about, as well workspace and offices for academic and professional services. The following photograph just shows an external view of the North Tower viewed from over at the intersection with Mays Crescent. And you can see partially hidden behind those louvers running up the building, part of the external ducting system. And that's part of the theme that we inspired in the design of engineering on display. Not a very exciting thing but to look at, but it's there and it's a very important function of the building itself. The following photograph just shows external view of the open plaza works fronting Mays Crescent to my rear right now, with the J03 South Tower in the background. This plaza also acts as a retention basin, and I can say with confidence that it worked very well during these recent heavy rain events. The next slide just shows a view of the teaching labs. This over to my left, on level 2, where we're currently sitting, and this has flexible space that permits equipment to be wheeled in and out for those purposes. The next shows a short view of the biomedical engineering teaching laboratories that are located on level 4. The BME teaching lab occupies some 500 square metres. It can accommodate up to 156 students, and as I indicated earlier, it's based off the Charles Perkins Centre X-Lab. That means it's flexible and you can conduct one large class or you can break it up into smaller classes because it has separated AV and overhead directional speakers. There are also several technical support prep spaces included on that floor to provide functionality. The BME research laboratories are located on level 6. They consist of 4 80 square metre labs, two on the east, I've got to get my directions right, and 2 on the west. And they have a common support corridor in between to house shared equipment, fridges and freezers and the like. In the centre is a large shared central laboratory, again, some 500 square metres in area, with 6 smaller adjacent labs supporting it. They're all PC2 enabled and therefore providing some future proofing to ensure that the university keeps up with the ever-evolving nature of research conducted. The BME workspace and offices are located on level 5, and they can accommodate up to some 97 staff, HDR and postdoctoral students. We have 7 meeting rooms and other breakout informal areas that you'll see today, and they're located throughout this north tower. A shared kitchen is on level 5, and it affords wonderful views of this atrium going right up to the roof, natural sunlight filtering through the skylight there, and that's the heart of the building that connects both the old south tower to the new north tower. After PC, we continue to assist BME with the hookup of various tools and equipment. That's taken some time. PC on this very building was achieved in May last year, and due with COVID and the like, we've only recently completed a lot of those works. The autoclave, glass washer, drying oven, biosafety cabinets, etc. All to provide and support functionality of the space. In closing, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all who contributed and assisted university infrastructure in facilitating this development, including the broader university community, their Senate subcommittees, the University Executive, Faculty of Engineering, School of Biomedical Engineering, School of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering, education and research partners, all of our consultants and our contractors, and our other colleagues across operations such as COS, ICT, finance, and of course, very own UI team. The following slide, I hope will play if technology sees me. It's a time-lapse video of the construction. I will depart from the podium now and hand back to Dr. Young. Please enjoy.
Thank you, Willy, for your opening remarks, and thank you, Scott, for the presentation about our new building. I'm sure we can agree that the music for the video was very fitting. I'd now like to call upon our distinguished guest speaker for tonight, Dig Howitt. Dig is the Chief Executive Officer and President at Cochlear, a company which has long been, and of course still is, the symbol of successful biomedical innovation in Australia, and improving countless lives for those with hearing impairment. He will give us a talk on biomedical engineering, solving problems to improve health and well-being. Let us welcome him to the podium with a warm round of applause.
Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here, to have the chance to talk with you all today. It's over 30 years since I spent quite a bit of time in J03 as hoping to graduate, and finally did graduate, electrical engineer. And quite a bit's changed over that time. The most obvious thing is the architecture. To have a building like this is just fantastic. I always wondered when I was here, we had J03, which was a grey concrete building surrounded by brown brick buildings for the engineering faculty, with the architectural faculty next door. I'm not sure if it's still next door. So whether this was to emphasise the architects, the importance of their study, or to remind the engineers about practicality. But it's wonderful that actually both can be combined in a building like this. And more seriously, on biomedical engineering, I think that actually the formation of the school, and Willy, I am a big supporter of what you've done, is another big advance from 30 years ago. When engineering was thought about from a discipline perspective, I think biomedical plays much more about an outcome perspective and a purpose perspective. And I think there's really two things about biomedical engineering that are the themes I want to talk to today. The first of those is about purpose. It actually gets to the purpose. And that's why I've chosen a definition. I've no idea if this is the right definition for biomedical engineering. But it is about solving problems to improve health and well-being. So it's a really clear purpose. And I think if we do need more engineers in Australia. We need more people to study engineering, to continue in engineering, and being clear about the purpose of engineering, I think, is far more important than saying, well, what is the discipline? And that's the theme in life at the moment, is what is my purpose in life? What is my organisation's purpose? What is my department's purpose? And it's a very good question, and it is because people are asking. And I think if we can talk about engineering from a purpose perspective, we bring people along with us and bring more people in. And the second one that I think is very important in biomedical and is true at Cochlear is the importance of collaboration. That isn't just about one discipline or one piece of knowledge. It's actually about very much a whole group of people with different knowledge, both engineering, medical and beyond, coming together that solves problems. And the story of the cochlear implant, which I will talk about briefly, is very much a story of multidisciplinary collaboration. I do hope this school can also be a further catalyst for that multidisciplinary collaboration. So what I want to talk about today was a little bit about the history of Cochlear, but in that context of purpose and collaboration. And also very much because Cochlear, as well as being known very broadly in Australia for biomedical engineering, is also a terrific example of university, business and government solving this problem of how do you commercialise the outstanding research that we do in Australia. And unfortunately, Cochlear gets held up too often as an example. There are more, but there haven't been enough. And I want to talk a little bit about what the Cochlear story in that context to perhaps provide some context on, hopefully some insight on how can we create more? How can we do more on commercialising research? So to do that, I want to start with Cochlear's purpose. Our purpose has been important for us far longer than purpose has been around as an important thing to talk about. It's something that we start all of our bigger meetings at Cochlear with, is our purpose. And it's important because it gets to actually why is there a company called Cochlear? And this is why. And it's about helping people hear and be heard. And it's also saying that actually, well, what our products and technology and the professional do is restore hearing. But why is that important? It's important because it empowers people to live a full life. With that ability to be empowered, there is then access to many more people across the world, that full life. That gets to, we want to transform the way people understand and treat hearing loss, because over 40 years on from the development of the cochlear implant, still a vast majority of people who would benefit from one don't get one in any country in the world. And that's about our attitudes to hearing loss. So again, if we're purposeful about empowering people's lives, it's also got to be about how do we help more people. And it's absolutely about innovation. And that's, again, collaborative innovation. It's engineering. It involves medical, involves material science, but it is broadly thinking about engineering and thinking about that over a lifetime. So Cochlear's purpose actually lays out our strategy to a large degree, as well as saying why is it that we exist. So what I want to do now is just look at where's Cochlear today and then come back to how do we get there. And the where is it today is not to, we're very proud of it, it's not to boast about it, it's actually to say it actually is significant. And therefore the story that created it hopefully has some relevance. So to provide context. So Cochlear is today a global company. We have been a global company from the start. We had to be. There are over 600,000 families around the world whose life has changed because of the development of the cochlear implant, and that's that was important that I'll come to. Those people are in 180 countries, so it is truly global. We have employees in 40 countries around the world. We now have about $1.5 billion in revenue. That's a nice number, but of that, about $750 million each year comes back into Australia. That goes to employing the more than 2,000 people we've got in Australia. We've got about just over 2,000 outside Australia as well, supporting 350 plus suppliers, paying tax. But it's a significant reasonably significant contribution to the Australian economy, and that gets back, I want to come back to that when we talk about the story of the start and the investments made to get going. And starting, as people would, I'm sure, do know, out of the University of Melbourne, we now have over 100 university collaborations around the world. Continuing with the University of Melbourne, also with the University of Sydney, and that ongoing collaboration is particularly important for furthering and developing the technology. And two last points. We do more than 80% of our manufacturing in Australia and about 2/3 of our global R&D in Australia as well. So we still have a very heavy Australian presence built from that original research. So that's nice and that's interesting in context, but much more interesting is how do we get here? So I want to go back then to two important people. It wasn't just about two people, it was about actually the teams that they led that was important. Graham Clark and Paul Traynor. And Graham obviously was well known as the inventor, but also and was instrumental in the invention of the cochlear implant, and not just of Cochlear the company, but actually in inventing a whole new therapy, of which Cochlear and other companies have formed to help so many people around the world. But it wasn't Graham on his own. And Graham was a surgeon, a medical doctor by training. There were engineers, audiologists, material scientists, software engineers, all working together in this multidisciplinary team. And this is about solving these complex problems to improve health and well-being. The development of cochlear implant is absolutely an example of that, solving complex problems in a multidisciplinary team. And over 11 years, Graham developed this team, led this team, and developed 4 prototype implants, which were implanted in 1978, 1979, with him starting in 1967 on the research. And that was fantastic research. Fantastic research delivering 4 prototype implants, but it's only through the commercialisation that hundreds of thousands of families around the world's lives end up changing. And the start of that commercialisation was Paul Traynor. And Paul Traynor was the founder of the Nucleus Group. The Nucleus Group in Australia in the 70s had a world-leading pacemaker business. So in Australia in the 70s, not many people know that, pacemakers were being developed and manufactured in this world-leading organisation. And obviously a lot of the technology in a pacemaker is similar to in a cochlear implant. So you had the industrialisation capabilities as well as the framework for global distribution to take this wonderful research and the 4 prototypes to build a commercial version and then take that to the world. But it wasn't just those 2 are not enough. There are, I think, a couple of other important ingredients. One of those is government. And so Paul Traynor had the expertise, he had the patient capital to deliver returns over a long time. What he didn't have was the high-risk capital, or didn't want to put in the high-risk capital that overcomes that very early stage. We say, yes, this prototype works, but does it work on scale? Is there genuinely a market out there? And that's where the government came in. And actually the Australian government at the time provided grants for commercialisation of research. Now, just in the last year, the current government had commissioned the University Research Commercialisation Task Force, of which I was a member, to look at how do we solve this problem of commercialising research. The first thing we got to, it's not a new problem, and this is not the first time it's trying to be solved. The Fraser government in the late 70s had a go at this, and Cochlear was the recipient of one of the grants that came from this program. And in the end, the federal government put about $4 million into just over $4 million into the commercialisation of the cochlear implant. That's about 15 million in today's terms, if you lift for inflation. And it wasn't all in one lump, it was done in stages. There had to be evidence shown and proof and progress made. But that role of government and that high-risk capital, knowing it'll fail, apparently there were 9 other investments made at the same time, they all failed. But even if those 9 together and they didn't all cost 4 million, but let's say they did and it's 15 million. Today it's 150 million all up that the government invested in today's dollars. Cochlear brings back 750 million dollars a year in the Australian economy. We pay $80 million in tax. The tax that our employees pay on top of that more than pays for that 150 every year in 1 year just to the government, let alone the broader economic benefit. So that risk capital and failure from government is critical, but we've then got to have in society acceptance that government will put money into things that won't work. And not criticise for that, but actually say that was a good thing to do because something will work, and hopefully we've learnt from that. But the other important element was the transition from research into industrialisation. And it wasn't a research is done, there you go. Graham Clark stayed very involved in that commercialisation phase, thinking through the design. Jim Patrick, who's an engineer in Graham Clark's team at the University of Melbourne, moved to Cochlear and still works part-time for Cochlear now over 40 years later. But that ability to move people, ideas from academia to companies, I think, is a critical part of transferring knowledge, getting the same language, being able to mesh research and commercial outcomes in a form that actually does work over time and does make sense. So I think the four elements of there, you've got to have good, very strong university research. Do need companies that are entrepreneurial with an industrialisation base that can commercialise ideas. We need governments that are prepared to put up risk capital and create, I won't get into this today, the broader policy settings that enable research to go ahead, enable companies to survive and to stay in Australia as they grow. And we need to be able to move people back and forward between academia and companies so that we get a common language, we get common understanding, and we work out how to mesh goals that don't always line up. And neither should they always line up, but it is through people working together and speaking the same language that they can do. So hopefully some insight into the development of Cochlear, but it absolutely is a biomedical success story, but it's a success story because of all those elements coming together, both purpose and collaboration. And it doesn't stop with the commercialisation. Cochlear has continued to invest in research. As I said, we have over 100 university research partnerships. We have spent over the 40 years now more than $2 billion on R&D, and that's developed much more than this, but a series of continuous innovation which has enabled Cochlear as a company to continue to lead in the field. But why have we been able to continue to lead? Because we continue to be able to provide better outcomes for our customers, for the recipients of our implants, whether that's improved hearing, whether that's more convenience in their everyday life, the ability to stream from phones to the implant, whether that's improved reliability, just knowing that the system is going to work day in, day out. But that continuing innovation, continuing research by companies, working in collaboration with universities, I think is critical, not just in the early phase, but actually all the way through, and making sure we've got an environment where that can happen is so important. And then so to finish up, it is wonderful to be here today. It's great to see that we have now a School of Biomedical Engineering. And I do hope that the school and the building can really be a place where we can solve complex problems in a collaborative way and with a purpose that does improve health and well-being, not just in Australia, but for people right around the world. Because I think, we have, and Willy, it was great to hear the increase in research and an increase in the number of students. We do need more people coming through. There's incredibly smart people, and we see that coming into Cochlear, coming out of universities, doing research in universities, the ability to capitalise on that to help society. And companies very clearly have a role in doing that. I think if you look at what Cochlear does around the world, only a commercial organisation can actually operate across 180 countries over a sustained period of time and continue to innovate. Some I think they're very important roles for university, very important roles for government, very important roles for industry. And I really hope, and I'm sure it can be, that this school and this building is a melting pot for all of those institutions to work together to really make a difference for society at large. So thank you, and wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Dick, for the inspiring presentation and highlighting the importance of collaboration. Insights from industry, from leaders of industry like yourself, truly valuable to strive to best train our next generation of biomedical engineers. I would now like to introduce our two presenters who are currently working on cutting-edge biomedical research right here in this building. Firstly, we will have Laura Haider, a Doctor of Philosophy student presenting on plasma processes to address challenges in biomedical applications. This will then be followed by Dr. Arnold Ju's presentation. Dr. Arnold Ju is an Australian Research Council DECRA Fellow and a lecturer in the School of Biomedical Engineering. And he will be presenting his research on organ-on-chip for blood clot risk assessment. Let's welcome our two presenters, first with Laura, with a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. My name is Laura Libnan Haidar, and as Dr. Young said, I am a PhD student here. Today, I'd like to introduce to you utilizing plasma processes to address challenges in biomedical applications. I will begin by introducing some of the work done by my amazing colleagues in our group, and then I will introduce my own research work. So to begin with, recent advances in biomedicine are too many to count, starting from biosensing applications or from biosensing design and fabrication in order to achieve detection and prevention of diseases, moving on to controlled drug delivery, which allows us to introduce therapeutic materials into the human body. It's clear that the integration of technology into medicine has allowed for new innovative methods to emerge for imaging and treatment day by day. However, most of the major challenges that are faced by a significant number of these advancements lies at the stage or at the level of integration within cellular environments. Now, at the stage of integration, we usually face rejection or a type of adverse reaction by the body in which we can see inflammations, we can see thrombosis, and in many cases, our immune system will try to expel this material. And so a lot of avenues of investigation have been made in order to try to mitigate these effects. Now, this has been done through trying to increase biocompatibility of the biomedical devices. That being said, we have not yet reached that goal, and that is majorly because a lot of the traditional and conventional ways to do it usually involve many wet chemical processes that can tend to lead to long durations for preparation, for application. They can tend to have or require waste disposals that have specific procedures due to the toxins that can be involved. And also, they require multiple steps that can be tedious and require expertise. That being said, this is what led to the encouragement of looking for dry processes, one of which is plasma. Plasma is known as the fourth state of matter. So plasma, when igniting a plasma, we are introducing an ionized gas, which can include, which includes electrons, photons, neutral and ionized species. And with a plasma, we are able to use plasma processes for biomedical functionalization in one of two ways. So we can categorize them in non-depositing plasmas, and these types of plasmas allow for the implantation of ionic species onto the layer or into the layer, the surface layer of our substrates. This is known as plasma immersion ion implantation. Now, the other method is depositing plasmas. This plasma allows us to synthesize new materials, such as nanoparticles, or a coating onto the surface of the treated substrates, which allows us to modify it by a plasma-activated coating, or short for PAC. Now, what you will be seeing in some of the tour today is this is some of our plasma systems, one of which is called the tube coater, and the other informally called three-chamber system because it has three chambers. So this is the one that I work with in our research. So in our group, we have been using plasma-activated coatings or PAC for biocompatible microfluidic devices. And what you can see in the image here is a window view, one of the ports of one of this of the triple chamber system that allows us to look into a glass substrate being subject to plasma-activated coatings. Now, this modification allowed for increasing biocompatibility of the glass substrate, which in effect allows for the enhancement of the biocompatibility for cell culture, microfluidic devices, and also for biosensing applications. In addition, we've also looked at plasma surface treatment. So one of my colleagues is looking at the treatment of scaffolds, which are highly porous material, which in a sense would be sort of impossible to treat in any conventional method because of the complexity of their designs. Now, these would go into orthopedic devices or any other devices that can be used in medical applications that requires very intricate detail. Now, the way that this works is using this plasma to be ignited in order to allow for a uniform surface treatment of the highly porous structure, which will allow or facilitate the biomedical integration of biomolecules onto the surface, attachment of the biomolecules onto the surface. We've also developed methods for, or are developing a method for utilizing PAC-treated substrates, after which we DNA immobilize them into biosensors. Now, these sensors would be extremely useful for the detection of blood clots on medical devices. The aim is to try to better understand how these blood clots form and how we can further prevent them in the future. Now, aside from looking at how we have been able to successfully attach proteins onto the surface of PAC-treated material, we've also been able to notice that with silicone stamps treatment, we are able to see an enhanced fluorescence after the protein. So this is very important for our imaging procedures, particularly for protein imaging. And one of the more exciting devices that you will probably be seeing in the tours today is this plasma jet. It functions at atmospheric pressure. And the main aim for this device is in order to try to use it for 3D bioprinting. And the novelty of this, not only is it something that is being explored as a new novel material or device for modifications, it's also considered to be one of the faster, greener, and more localized treatments that is available compared to conventional methods. And now this brings us to my work. My work is in plasma polymerized nanoparticles, which is one of the depositing plasmas. As you can see in the image here, we can simply try to collect nanoparticles that form by using a 24-well cell cultural plate inside the chamber. So when we do that, I will show you a short video of how these particles, we can sort of see them by eye being formed, but not to the extent they're nanoparticles, but to the extent of seeing how, as a group, when they're forming in an oscillatory phase, they form waves. And these waves, when we subject them to a laser light, we can see there's an intermittent gap, and we'll be able to see how they are moving in trajectory downwards. So this is the window or the port of our chamber, and those intermittent gaps will be the particles actually forming and falling into the chamber. So after their formation, these particles can simply be collected and removed from the chamber onto the bench top. And the beauty of it all is that we can simply suspend them over the bench by aliquoting some water or some solvent that we're looking into biomedical functionalization. This allowed us to perform lots of characterizations. So one of which is characterizing their morphology, their physical shape. They're sort of spherical or cauliflower shaped, and they have uniform sizes, which is very good and useful when you're trying to get things to be on the way that you would like them to be. We've also looked at their surface composition. They are purely organic, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and a little bit of oxygen based, and they have a very useful characteristic in their surfaces that when they are suspended in liquids, they have a very high zeta potential, which is very much useful and desired for biomedical applications. And with the help of Dr. Erin Gilmore, we were able to see that these particles are non-cytotoxic, always a good thing when you're looking at biomedical applications. And so with this very exciting opportunity of these particles, what we would like to do is see if we can utilize them for biomedical applications. So the first thing we actually did is try to conjugate different dyes and different proteins onto their surfaces. And this is a little sketch of what we've tried so far. We've done lipophilic Nile red, Nile blue, and also green fluorescent protein separately. They were all done in a single, simple incubation step, which bypasses all the wet chemical processes that we're used to. So in conclusion, our aim is try to, at least in my own personal work, is to try to hopefully obtain a multifunctional platform that will not only have dyes or green fluorescent proteins. At some point, hopefully, we will be having dyes, proteins, or drugs, or many multiple different concoctions of moieties that would allow us to perform imaging, targeting, treatment all in one. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for your attention. I will move on now to Dr. Arnold.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Arnold. I'm from the BME, and I would like to thank my head of school, Greg, for offering this opportunity to speak and represent our school. And today, my dean really mentioned this whole process. Today we celebrate the BME launch, and it is a great venture. I would like to share my experience. And during this recruitment, I was one of them. There are some people decided now to take the offer because there is a risk, to start this opportunity. And I'm so proud today to be on the other side of the camp. Took the offer and then took this venture. And I want to share with you what I have done and hopefully convince everyone on the shared views that the BME opens the new avenues for the research, for next generation of students, and also for our community. So, see if we can play this.
Each year, approximately 55,000 Australians suffer a heart attack, many as a result of blood clots. By analyzing the mechanical forces in molecules and cells that drive blood clot formation under flow circulation, I have pioneered the bioengineering techniques to diagnose, treat, and control the blood clotting diseases. Using the mechanobiology to advance the knowledge of cardiovascular system at molecular and cellular scales, I discovered mechanosensory proteins and developed mechanomedicine to prevent disease-forming clots.
So I joined these ventures about 3 years ago. I got the offers from Willy and Greg, all by myself, and with the 3 years, we built this team, and also the research outcomes from this BME. But behind these journeys, nothing is very straightforward, because when you start it up, there's the little rooms that are on the left, where I end up with, in the AMME rooms, have an old office in J07, and that's where I got my first computer. And from there, I record all the journeys from, from every single members that recruit to my teams. It's like the fans, like the exciting videos Scott mentioned, from the building the BME buildings. I'm building my own labs. I would like to thank the journeys, everybody's from the Faculty of Engineering, Greg, Simons, Gwen, Nadia, Ching, and Stephens. All these people support the BME faculties and academics to build a new team. And this is what we're going to look like in the new J03 level 6 in these common areas. We build the latest confocal microscopy, particle imaging velocimetries, biomechanical nanotubes in the dark rooms, and also the microfabrication vessel and chips in the microfluidic rooms. So I'll give you some of these previews on what we're doing now. And we have lots of amazing undergraduate and graduate students, also postdocs that populate in this room and doing the research. And also I would like to say, the BME is a really interdisciplinary cutting edge that attracts a lot of this new opportunity to form new partnerships across the university. And my research groups, starting from developing the single biomechanical nanotubes, all expand from single cell, single molecule levels to computational modelings, to microfluidics, data science, organ-on-chip, and more recently, the point-of-care diagnostic devices. And during this journey, we formed new partnerships and new grants with the CINI manufacturing hubs, the microscopy center, also CINI health partners from HRI, Royal Hospitals, Royal Princess Alfred Hospital, and Charles Perkins Centers. And in addition to that, and during this process, we're not just doing the basic research or engineering development, but we also have opportunity to apply the research to our community. So this is what happens during my time, during my recruitment times, also the COVID times. I learned about these problems from my colleagues at CPC, blood clots, which is my focus area, that turn out to be very bad for our community with this, the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine issues. We heard about this news that these young generations, young women, multiple of them died or injured due to this vaccination process because of the blood clots. It turned out to be a very rare types of the thrombocytopenia, thrombosis problems in the brain. And but it's not just limited to the vaccine, but also with a lot of these recurring chronic problems when you treat with the drugs, for example, the heparin. And there's no solutions to address these blood clots problems in the brain triggered by a vaccine or other drug treatments. And then I work with the clinicians, freed-up persons at CPC and hospitals, and we apply the BME facility and the research pipelines I just showed you to these society problems. So here's the video.
Experts are also pivoting in the pandemic. For 3 years, they've studied why some people clot easier than others. They're now shifting focus to the AstraZeneca vaccine.
This weird clotting was discovered beginning of April. We don't know yet why it's happening. It's an extreme immune reaction, which happens in 1 in 90,000.
Their pilot study is trying to identify biomarkers for blood clot risks with AZ patients, and they have to make a fake vein to do so on one of these, an endo chip.
It's a little chip which has a fake vein on it, and we know that the AstraZeneca clots are happening in veins in the brain or in the tummy.
2 tiny drops of blood are then flushed through the fake vein. The green dots are clots forming.
We want to see if it lights it up, if it makes it more clotty, if it will create inflammation in that vein.
So one of my favorite quote is the little man and the big dreams. And we have these little chips that we're fabricating from the BME, and then we now deliver this to our clinical colleagues at the CPC, hospitals, and we're hoping this thing can be pushing forward into recapitulating some of these biomedical engineering applications in our society. In a way, like the Modernas, that deliver the biomedical engineering technologies to address the healthcare crisis. And I see that as the new dawn for biomedical engineering. And I'm very fortunate that I have been with this big university, the CINI. We had the CINI Nano Grant Challenges. We have other initiatives, and they fund us to engage all these partners from the clinical domains to the public domains and also the policy translation. So I think the vision now is we're trying to develop these microchips, put them into these hand-holding devices, and then work with the clinicians, work with the federal government MRFF funding mechanisms, and then push them toward society. So this is my last minute, but I really want to thank the great teams, my labs behind this, and also the dean, head of school, the colleagues from the core facility, and also some of the key publications we made for the past 3 years. And I think it's to convince everybody this is the shared views, open the new avenues for the research, for the community. And the last thing I want to highlight is during this journey, I had met 2 wonderful colleagues and also my trainees. Sabina Kosmans from Mainz, Germany, joined me, co-supervised as a postdoc in my research during the BME initiative. And then she now got the offers to move to the CSL Australia to become a bioengineer in that team. Laura Madovans came to Australia. She received the medical school offers at Utah, and then she took a holiday to Australia. And then she got trapped here because of the COVID, couldn't return to the US. And he was looking for jobs, and then he found the BME, so he found me. And then he did the 2 years research assistant with me, and he really enjoyed it. And then she told me she's gonna apply the PhD for the BME. So we're trying to convince everybody we're actually globally attractive to bring these people in and to deliver the products out. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Arnold. It's always exciting to hear from colleagues about their latest research and to live in a world where our research actually leaves a lasting and meaningful impact. I would now like to introduce our University of Sydney Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mark Scott, for his closing remarks. Please give a round of applause as he makes his way to the podium.
Well, thanks, Yung, and thanks, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a fascinating afternoon. I'm sure you'd all agree. And I think I stand between you and the tour. And so I know more interesting moments lie ahead. So let me just briefly make some comments and reflect a little bit on what I've heard. It's interesting, I think, if you look at the history of this university, 170 years old, there have been eras that we've gone through where there have been significant building and significant construction, and then other times where not as much. And I think we're going through an era of a significant rebuilding in and around campus now, though I think Willy and others would have pointed out that perhaps engineering has not always had its fair share of the big investments that have been made in capital around the university over the recent decade. And I must say, even though I wasn't an engineering student when I was a student here at Sydney, this part of the university is very familiar because it does look similar to the university engineering facilities that were here when I was a student in the 80s. But that's all changing, and that's all changing in part with this magnificent facility here and other things that Willy has planned as well. I can assure you it's been to the university executives to get more approval for more developments here in engineering, and I think this investment is timely and appropriate and very, very exciting, as I think we've heard this afternoon. I think this investment also in biomedical engineering is, as Dig pointed out, just so appropriate to the pressing needs and the pressing challenges and the pressing opportunities that exist before us now. And as we heard, there are real opportunities that come from multidisciplinary engagement around the complexity of the challenges that we face. And so what is exciting to me is not just this building and all the opportunities that will emerge from the work that takes place here, but it's the neighbourhood in which it's now operating, with Tech Central rolling down one side of the university and this extraordinary investment that's going to be made with tech industries there. Then across campus to the Charles Perkins Centre and the very significant investment in biomedical facilities that are going to take place through Royal Prince Alfred Hospital and with our Faculty of Medicine and Health, that this really does emerge as a national hotspot for investment in biomedical engineering, biomedical sciences, and also the opportunity by bringing together the tech sector, engineering, science, medical research, all in close proximity to each other and working closely and effectively with each other. This could be a regional hub of global significance over the decades ahead. But in order to do that, you need to make the investment, and that's what the university has done with the strong encouragement of the engineering faculty here. And you need to create an environment that generates deep disciplinary expertise for the multidisciplinary opportunities to be explored. You need both to take place. And so the deep disciplinary expertise that's going to come to bear here with biomedical engineering, with the strong leadership of the faculty, with the clear talent that we're attracting globally, I think is very, very exciting for the Faculty of Engineering, but very exciting for the University of Sydney, but also this state and the nation. It was interesting, Dig, hearing you talk about engineering and engineering shortages, and I think it's a very significant issue that will probably not get the focus that it should during the federal election campaign. We hear a lot of discussion about skilled shortages, but there's a chronic shortage of engineering. Engineering graduates, students studying engineering. It is a real bottleneck in the pipeline and the opportunities that we have in the nation. Particularly around advanced manufacturing opportunities, biomedical engineering and the like. But it's noteworthy that in all the debate that's taking place through the election campaign, there's not been the focus about universities being part of the solution to this great skills challenge, and for the big research universities like the University of Sydney to be absolutely at the forefront of providing the solutions to the challenges that the nations face. But the universities understand this, industry leaders, industry partners understand this, and it's an argument that we need to continue to be able to make. And it is embodied by the achievements of companies like Cochlear and it's embodied by the achievements and the opportunities that come from the investment in facilities like this. Despite all the wonderful facilities, though, and the investment that we're making, finally it's people that will make the difference. And that's why I thought it was just wonderful to hear from Laura and Arnold this afternoon, and the work that they are doing, taking advantage of the opportunities the facilities create to really work on research that could have profound impact in the lives of thousands or millions of people down the track. And that's the extraordinary thing, I think, about investment in research that we always have to keep in mind and keep at the forefront of the political debate and political discussion, that you do not know when you are in the discovery process of where that road might lead, what opportunities might open up, what the potential impact might be down the track. And whilst there is clearly and understandably a focus on commercialisation of research and translation of research and lots of incentives for universities and companies to focus on the commercialisation end, it might be the work that Laura and Arnold are doing now that will be the profound impact for commercialisation and translation a decade from now. And we need to be doing all of it. We need a focus on commercialisation, a focus on translation, but a focus purely on the discovery side of research too. And that's all those opportunities open up from this kind of facility here. So it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be able to explore the opportunities that are going to be made available here, but it's wonderful to be supporting great researchers in the work that they're doing, because it's the work of the researchers that are at the core of the knowledge endeavour that we have here at the university. Thanks everyone for being part of it, and like you, I look forward to exploring this building in the hour ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And with your remarks, we conclude our J03 Biomedical Engineering Facilities launch event.